Well, hello, class. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be going over the end of Book 10 and the beginning of Book 11. One thing I want to note here is that Chapter 10 and Odysseus' interaction with Cersei is really all about showing how wise Odysseus is. So, as you can see, I popped in a picture here. When Cersei turns Odysseus' men into pigs, it's a problem, and Odysseus is able to overcome this through guile and charm, and so it's a story to show the heroic characteristics of Odysseus, who, even though he's still a great warrior, but even more than that, he is cunning and he is wise, and so. And once again in this picture, I love this picture because you see Cersei here. She is at her crafts. Odysseus' men are turned into pigs. But once again, where is Odysseus' focus? It's home. And ultimately, even though there's some distractions here or there, that is what's going to end up being the focus of this chapter. So let's go and pick up here at line 356. Odysseus has just basically convinced Cersei to turn his men back into humans from pigs. He's charmed her into this. One other thing I want to quickly note for you students is that I am going to be trying to give you a little bit more insight in how to make notes on the side, because what a lot of you students are missing is the commentary as you annotate. So I'll try and demo that a little bit for you now. All right, so they're making stuff, wine and stuff to eat. We kind of picked up in the middle here. The third mixed wine, kind, sweet, and fragrant, in the silver mixing bowl, and set out the golden goblets. The fourth one brought in water, and then set about building up an abundant fire underneath the great cauldron, and the water heated. But when the water had come to a boil in the shining bronze, then she sat me down in the bathtub and washed me from the great cauldron, mixing hot and cold just as I wanted, and pouring it over my shoulders and head, and taking the heart-wasted weariness from my limbs. When she had bathed me, anointed me with olive oil, she put a splendid mantle and tunic upon me, and made me sit in a chair that was wrought elaborately with silver nails. That means like decorations and beautiful ironwork. And under my feet was a footstool. So if I was going to comment on this, I would say something along the lines of Cersei takes good care of Odysseus. Not only is Cersei going to free the men from being pigs, but she takes good care of Odysseus. And I also want to point out, you'll see that she does these almost exactly the same words. Remember, in the Iliad and the Odyssey, we reuse phrases. And so if you look at these words here, okay, right, she bathed me anointed with olive oil, white, and put a splendid mantle and tunic on me. We'll see almost those exact same words a little bit later, referring to Odysseus' men. A grave housekeeper brought in bread and served us, adding a good many things to it, generous with her provisions, and told us to eat. But nothing pleased my mind as I sat there thinking of something else, my mind full of evil imaginings. So I just realized I made a little bit of an error here. Odysseus is going to convince Cersei to free his men right now. He hasn't done that yet. What he had just done was convince her to basically let him free and not turn him into a pig. Okay. So right here, Odysseus is musing. Okay? Odysseus is musing. Okay? He's not eating. In other words, he's showing that he's upset. When Cersei noticed how I sat there, without ever putting my hands out on the food, and with a strong sorrow upon me, she came in close and stood beside me and addressed me in these words. This is what Cersei said. Why, Odysseus, do you sit so, like a man who has lost his voice, eating your heart out, but touch neither food or drink? Is it that you suspect me of more treachery? But you have nothing to fear, since I've already sworn my strong oath to you. So Cersei had just promised Odysseus not to do anything treacherous, turn him into a pig or whatever else. Okay, she gave him his word. So she spoke, but I answered her again and said to her, O Cersei, how could any man in his right mind ever endure to taste the food and drink that are set before him, until with his eyes he saw his companions set free? So then, if you are sincerely telling me to eat and drink, set them free, so my eyes can again behold my eager companions. So here we have it. This is the wisdom. I would almost call it guile, which is almost like a sneaky wisdom of Odysseus. He's basically, she wants to please him and she wants him to be happy, but he's basically saying, I will not be happy until you free my men from these pigs, from being pigs. So I spoke, and Cersei walked throughout the palace, holding her wand in her hand, and opened the doors to the pigsty and drove them out. They looked like 9-year-old porkers. I put a little smiley face there. I was chuckling. They stood and ranged and faced her, and she, making her way through their ranks, anointed each of them with some other medicine, and the bristles grown upon them by the evil medicine Cersei had bestowed on them before now fell away from them, and they turned back once more into men, younger than they had been, and taller for the eye to behold, and handsomer by far. So my little note here on this one is Cersei doesn't just turn them back into the men, but Cersei turns men. Wait, hold on. Let's go back. Pigs back to men. They look better than before, right? More handsome, taller, younger. They recognized me, and each of them clung to my hand. The lovely longing for lamentation came over us, and the house echoed terribly to the sound, and even the goddess took pity. And she, shining among the goddesses, came close and said to me. Now, here, I love Odysseus as the hero of the story gets such a long epithet, right? Son of Laertes, the seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus. As a matter of fact, I should circle this area right here. That's all epithets for Odysseus. Go back now to your fast ship to the land of the seashore. First of all, drag your ship on the land, stowing your possessions, putting away your possessions, and all the ship's running gear away in the sea caves. And then come back and bring with you your eager companions. So she spoke, and the proud heart within me was persuaded. And I went down to my fast ship in the sand of the seashore, and there I found, beside the fast ship and my eager companions, pitiful in their lamentation and the big tears. So Cersei can't write today. Cersei tells O to go get men. Now this is a little concerning, because remember, she could just turn them all into pigs again, but she's given Odysseus her word, and I think Odysseus trusts this. And as, by the way, I just put here, there's a simile. As in the country, the calves around the cows returning from the pasture back to the dung of the farmyard, well filled with grazing, and came gamboling together to meet them, and the pens no longer can hold them, but lowing incessantly, they come running around their mothers. So like that, so these men, once their eyes saw me, came streaming around me in tears, and the spirit of them made them feel as if they were back in their own country, the very country of rugged Ithia, where they were born and raised up. So Odysseus here is being compared to a mother. This would be an interesting note to put down, okay? And I would definitely say good job if I saw this. O is compared to men's mothers, okay? He makes them feel at home. So they came in tears to me and cried about in wings words. Odysseus' men say this. Oh, great Odysseus, I forgot to circle that. We are as happy to see you returning as if we had come back to our own Ithacan country. But come, tell us about the death of our companions. So they spoke, but I answered in soft words and told them, first of all, let us drag our ship up on the land, stowing our possessions and all the ship's running gear in the sea caves, right? And then make haste of you, all of you, and come with me so that you can see your companions in the sacred dwelling of Cersei, eating and drinking, for they all have all in abundance. Okay, so O tells men to come. So I spoke, and at once they did as I told them. Only Eurylochus was trying to hold back my other companions, and he spoke to them and addressed them in winged words. This is what Eurylochus said. Ah, poor wretches, where are we going? Why do you long for the evils of going down to Circe's palace? For she will transform the lot of us into pigs or lions, and we shall guard her great house for her under compulsion. Compulsion means force. So too it happened with the Cyclops when our companions went into his yard, and the bold Odysseus was of their company, for it was by this man being Odysseus, his recklessness, that these two perish. So Eurylochus is telling men not to trust. Oh. Why? Because Odysseus led many of them to their slaughter with a Cyclops. He has a fair point. But you can imagine Odysseus isn't very happy with this. And we see that right here. So he spoke, and I considered in my mind whether to draw out the long-edged sword from beside my big thigh and cut off his head and throw it to the ground, even though he was nearly related to me by marriage. But my companions checked me, first one, another speaking, trying to soothe me. Zeus sprung Odysseus, what they say, if you ask us, we will leave this man here to stay where he is and keep watch over the ship. You show us the way to the sacred dwelling of Cersei. So, O wants to kill. O wants to kill Eurylochus, okay? But, and I'm sorry for my handwriting here, everybody. Men convince him not to. All right? So they spoke and started up the hill from the seashore, nor would Eurylochus be left alone by the hollow ship, but followed along in fear of my fierce reproaches. This is, reproaches means you tell somebody off or you're angry with them. So Eurylochus actually still follows the men as well. Pop that back. There we go. All right. Meanwhile, inside the house, Cersei, with loving care, bathed the rest of my companions. Now, remember I told you that the same words of Odysseus being bathed are going to be used for the people? Note here. And anointed them well with olive oil, and put in them on them mantles of fleece and tunics. So I might make a little note here. Same as Odysseus, right? Okay, just a little note here. Same wording basically being used. We found them all together, feasting in the halls. My men looked at each other in the face and knew one another, and they burst into an outcry of tears, and the whole house echoed. They all recognized each other. They knew that their friends had been turned into pigs, and they are so overjoyed to see them men again. But she, Cersei, shining among goddesses, came close and said to us, Son of Laertes and seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, no longer raise the swell of your lamentation. I, too, know all the pains you have suffered on the sea where the fish swarm, and the damage done to you on the dry land by hostile men. But come now, eat your food and drink your wine, until you gather back into your chests the kind of spirit you had when you first left the land of your fathers of rugged Ithaca. Rest, right? Rest and be strong. Now you are all dried out, dispirited from the constant thought of your hard wandering, nor is there any spirit in your festivity because of much suffering. So rest and gain strength. That's what she's telling him to do. So she spoke, and the proud heart in us was persuaded. All right, so they were persuaded to stay. And there all our days until a year. 1 year they stay there. We sat there feasting on unlimited meat and sweet wine. But when it was the end of the year, and the months wasted away, and the seasons changed, and the long days were accomplished, then my eager companion called me aside and said to me, "What ails you now? It is time to think about our own country. If truly it is ordained that you shall survive and come back to your strong founded house and the land of your fathers." So the men are asking Odysseus to go home. Okay? Or men want to go home. They want to go home. Time to go, Odysseus. So they spoke, and the proud heart in me was persuaded. Note here that we're using this proud heart in us was persuaded. Proud heart in me was persuaded. Earlier it said that the proud heart in Odysseus was persuaded. So if you wanted to note something interesting, you could use a different color here, and you could note here that these lines, okay, now where's this one? Okay, are basically the same. All right, and once again, this type of repetition is done in the Iliad and Odyssey on purpose. And the proud heart in me was persuaded. For the whole length of the day until the sun setting, we sat there feasting on unlimited meat and wine. But when the sun went down and the sacred darkness came over, they lay down to sleep about the shadowy chambers. But I, mounting the surpassingly beautiful bed of Cersei, clasped her knees. What happens when you're clasping the knees? You are supplicating, right? Supplicating. You are asking, and entreated her. That's what actually entreated literally means ask. And the goddess listened to me, and I spoke to her and addressed her in words. So this is Odysseus' words. "O Cersei, accomplish now the promise you gave." Remember the one that she gave before in yesterday's reading, that you would see me on my way home. The spirit within me is urgent now, as also in the rest of my friends who are wasting my heart away, lamenting around me when you are elsewhere. So, hey, Cersei, time to fulfill your promise. Time for Cersei to fulfill promise. All right, that's what he's saying. So I spoke, and she, the shining one goddesses, answered, "Son of Laertes, seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus." Once again, Odysseus gets that super long epithet. "You shall no longer stay in the house when none of you wish to. But first there's another journey you must accomplish, and reach the house of Hades, and of revered Persephone." Remember, Persephone and Hades are married, okay? They are to consult with the soul of Tiresias the Theban, the blind prophet whose senses lay unshaken within him, to whom alone Persephone is granted intelligence even after death, but the rest of them are flittering shadows. A couple things to unpack here, okay? So, O needs to go talk to Tiresias. I'm just going to call it T, okay? Who can see prophetically even though he is dead and in Hades. Now, in a sense, I've looked up Tiresias. He is one of the wisest prophets. And the fact that he also comes from the underworld means that he's able to see even more. So he is going to be able to see a great deal for Odysseus. The problem is he's dead. So if you want to contact him, you have to commune with him in the underworld. And what we're going to get here in this next little part is a little glimpse into the kind of developing, it got developed over time, the idea of the underworld and what people did after death. Okay, we'll see that a little bit in the next chapter. So she spoke, and the inward heart in me was broken. Odysseus is sad. Okay, well, now why is he sad? Well, because he can't go straight home, right? And I want you to note that Odysseus is sad, and you're going to see his men are going to be sad when, at the same time, when he tells them the same thing. But moving on. And I sat down on the bed and cried, nor did the heart in me wish to go on living any longer, nor look at the sunlight. But when I had glutted myself, means satisfied myself with rolling about and weeping, then at last I spoke aloud and answered the goddess, Cersei, who will be our guide on that journey? No one has ever yet on a black ship gone all the way to Hades. So I spoke, and she, shining among the goddesses, answered, Son of Laertes and seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, let no need for a guide on your ship trouble you. Only set up your mast pole and spread the white sails upon it, and sit still, and let the blast of the north wind carry you. But when you have crossed with your ship the stream of the ocean, you will find there a thickly wooded shore and the groves of Persephone. Now, the groves of Persephone traditionally are the gateway to Hades. Okay, the groves, this is where Persephone comes up and then goes down every year. So the groves of Persephone are the gateway to Hades traditionally in Greek mythology. And tall black poplars growing and fruit perishing willows, and then beach your ship on the shore of the deep eddying ocean, and you yourself go forward into the moldering home of Hades. So they're going to go, and they're going to go into the mouth of Hades. There, and forgive me on pronunciation, Periphlagathan and Cocytus, which is an off-break from the river of Styx. Styx is one of the main rivers in the in Hades, thrown to Acheron. That's another one of the main rivers in Hades. Okay, there are 4 rivers in Hades, and so you'll see them spelled differently, but these are the 4 right here. All right, the most famous one is Styx, probably followed by Acheron, and then the other 2. There's a rock there in the junction of 2 thunderous rivers. There, hero, you must go and close in and do as I tell you. Dig a pit about a cubit in each direction and pour it full of drink offerings for all the dead. Excuse me. First, honey mixed with milk, and second, pouring sweet wine, and third, water, and over them sprinkle white barley. So he's going to go to basically this entrance of Hades, and he's going to get ready, and he's going to build this. Basically, it's almost like a pit with things that are going to attract the dead. Okay, so this pit, okay, and the things in it will attract the dead. Now, the idea here is this is safer than Odysseus going into the underworld, because few have ever gone into the underworld and come out. So he's going to attract them to him instead of going in himself. And promised many times over the strengthless heads of the Paris dead that returning to Ithaca you will slaughter a bear and cow your best in your palace and pile the pyre with treasures, and to Tiresias, okay, that's the kind he's talked to, apart, decorate an all-packed black ram, the one conspicuous in all your sheep flocks. Okay, so he's going to make special sacrifices. But when with prayers you have entreated the glorious hordes of the dead, then sacrifice 1 ram and 1 black female, turning them towards the Erebus, but yourself turn away from them and make for where the river runs, and there numerous souls of the perished dead will come and gather about you. Then encourage your companions and tell them, taking the sheep that are lying by, and slaughtering with them the piteous brawn, to skin these and burn them, and pray to the divinities, to Hades the powerful, and to revered Persephone. While you yourself, drawing from beside your thigh the sharp sword, to crouch there, do not let the strengthless heads of the perished draw nearer to the blood until you've questioned Tiresias. Then the leader of the host, the prophet, will soon come to you, and he will tell you the way to go on the stages of your journey, and tell you how to make your way home on the sea where the fish swarm. Okay, there's a lot going on here. Let's just quickly break this down. Okay, they're going to dig a hole. In the hole, they're going to put all these things. Okay? With all those things, then, he's going to attract the dead. It's like a smelly offering trap for the dead. Okay? Then they're going to make multiple offerings. Okay? And some of these offerings here you can see then sacrifice one black female, okay, one ram and one black female, right? And then here's another one, taking the sheep that are lying by and slaughtering them with piteous bronze, burn them and pray to the divinity. So that's another offering, okay? And so you're going to wait with your sword, and then you're going to hold off. So here we go. We've got a pit. We have multiple offerings. We're going to hold off dead until T shows. And then T will tell you how to make your way home. All right? So that's kind of what's going on. A bunch of stuff here. This doesn't even look like a pit of offering. It looks like somebody's with a bad hair day. But whatever. Here we go. Moving on. So she spoke, and dawn of the golden throne came on us, and she put clothing upon me, an outer cloak and a tunic, while she, the nymph, remember this is that's like a lower goddess of the woods, mantled herself in a gleaming white robe, fine woven and delightful, and around her waist she fastened a handsome belt of gold, and on her head was a wimple. I looked that up. It's one of those cloth headdresses that actually became really popular in the Middle Ages. While I walked about the house and roused my companions, standing beside each man, speaking to them in kind words. Here's what he said. No longer lie abed and dreaming in a way of sweet sleep. The queenly Cersei has shown us the way. Let us go now. So I spoke, and the proud heart in them was persuaded. Yet I did not lead away my companions without some loss. So Odysseus goes and gets his men. Just write that here. O goes and gets men. But there is a loss. There is one, Elpenor, youngest man, the youngest man, not terribly powerful in fighting nor sound in his thoughts. I put a smiley face because, in other words, he's not the brightest tool in the toolbox. This man, apart from the rest of his friends in search of cool air, had lain down drunkenly to sleep on the roof of Cersei's palace. Okay, smart. While you're drunk, that sounds like a good idea. And when his companions stirred to go, okay, because they were going, right, hearing their tumult and noise of talking, started suddenly up and never thought, and he went down to go by the way of the long ladder, but blundered straight off the edge of the roof, so that his neck bone was broken out of its sockets, and his soul went down to Hades. Now, something interesting to know that we'll find out is nobody knows until they actually get there. But E falls off roof and dies, which is kind of a sad thing right before they leave. Now, as my men were on their way, I said a word to them. You think you're on your way back to your own beloved country, but Cersei has indicated another journey for us, to the house of Hades and the revered Persephone. I forgot to circle those. And there to consult the soul of Tiresias the Theban. All right. So I spoke, and the inward heart in them was broken, and they sat down on the ground and lamented and tore their hair out. but there was no advantage to them for all their sorrowing. Remember, I told you that Odysseus' men were going to have the same action as him when they found out that they had to do this first. When we came down to our fast ship in the sandy seashore, we sat down sorrowful and weeping big tears. Circe, meanwhile, had gone down herself to the side of the black ship and tethered a boarded ram and one black female, easily passing by us unseen. Here's a question. Whose eyes can follow the movement of a god passing from place to place unless the god wishes? So she did this in secret. She got the things for their sacrifice ready. All right, we have a little bit in book 11 to go, and I don't want to make this too long, so I'm going to move straight in. Now when we had gone down again to our sea and our vessel, first of all, we dragged the ship down to the bright water, and in the black hole set the mast in place and set sails, and took the sheep and walked them aboard, and ourselves also embarked. But sorrowful and weeping big tears, Circe of the lovely hair, the dread goddess who talks with mortals, sent us an excellent companion. What's the companion? A following wind, filling our sails to carry from astern the ship with a dark prow. Okay, so they leave. And Circe sends a favorable wind. All right. We ourselves, over all the ship, making fast the running gear, sat still and let the wind and the steersman hold her steady. All day long her sails were filled as she went through the water, and the sun set and the journey ways were darkened. I love how that's worded. And the sunset and the journeying ways were darkened. It gets dark. Simple way to say is it got dark. She made the limit, which is the deep running ocean. So they sail across the ocean, and there lie the community and city of the Cimmerian people, hidden in fog and cloud. Nor does Helios is the sun, the radiant sun, ever break through the dark to illuminate them with his shining. Neither when it climbs up to the starry heaven, nor when he wheels to return from heaven to earth, but always a glum night is spread over the wretched mortals. I was chuckling here. Sun never shows in the city. Okay, so I'm calling this Seattle. Actually, let's back that up. Let's go. This is I'll do it. Seattle of the Odyssey. Now, why did I say Seattle? Because supposedly you never see the sun in Seattle. It's not true. Sometimes the sun pokes through. But Seattle is famous for all of its rain. And so people say that if you go up to Seattle, you can go months without seeing the sun. So this is kind of the same thing here, except in the Cimmerian people, the sun never shows. It's a gloomy place to live. Making this point, we ran the ship ashore and took out the sheep, and ourselves walked along by the stream of the ocean until we came to the place with which Circe had spoken. So they're there. They're at the underworld rivers. And there, Pyramedes and Eurylochus held the victims fast, and I, drawing from beside my thigh my sharp sword, dug a pit, a cubit in each direction. And note here, if you went back, you would see that a lot of the same words, just like you would expect, are the same from Circe's instructions. So I'm going to skim through this pretty quick. And poured in it full of offerings for all the dead. First honey to mix milk, this is exactly the same. And the second pouring the sweet rind, and third water, and over I sprinkled white barley. I promised many times to the strengthless heads of the perished dead, returning to Ithaca, that I would slaughter the barren cow, my best in my palace, and pile the power with treasures. And to Tiresias' part I would dedicate an all-black ram, the one conspicuous in all of our sheep flocks. So, you know what I might just say here is same as when Circe gave instructions. Right? Just noting that this is the same terminology, almost exactly the same words used. Now when, with sacrifices and prayers, I had so entreated the hordes of the dead, I took the sheep and cut their throats over the pit, and the dark clouding blood ran in, and the souls of the perished dead gathered place. Up out of Eurybos, brides, so here's who came out, and young unmarried men, and long-suffering elders, and virgins tender with the sorrows of young hearts upon them, and many fighting men killed in battle, stabbed with brazen spears, still carrying their bloody armor upon them. So this is a list of types of dead. And really, it's just everybody, right? It's just everybody. It's all kinds of people die at different times of life. But one thing to notice here is that the dead come out in kind of the way that they were when they died. These came swarming around my pit from every direction with inhuman clamor, and green fear took a hold of me. Odysseus is afraid. He's afraid of all of this crowd of dead people crowding around him. Let me scroll up. There we go. When I encouraged my companions and told them, taking the sheep that were lying by and slathered them with piteous blondes to skin these and burn them and pray to the divinities. Remember, this is exactly the same thing as before. To Hades, the powerful and revered Persephone, while I myself, drawing from beside my thigh my sharp sword, crouched there and would not let the strengthless heads of the Paris draw near to the blood until I had questioned Cersei. Now note here, a couple of times we call them strengthless heads. This is kind of an early idea of a ghost, but it's not a ghost. It just means they don't have the strength of the overworld with them. So there is an idea here that they're not powerful in a physical manner. And so this is kind of an early idea of a ghost that kind of goes into the underworld. All right, moving on. But first there came the soul of my companion Elpenor. Remember, Elpenor is the guy who fell off the roof. For he had not been buried under the earth of the wide ways, since we had left his body behind in Cersei's palace. I guess they were leaving so quick they forgot to look for him. Unburied and unwept with this other errand before us. I broke into tears at the sight of him, and my heart pitied him. And I spoke aloud to him and addressed him with winged words. Elpenor, how did you come here beneath the fog and the darkness? You have come faster on foot than I on my black ship. So, at least as far as we can tell, finds out that he is dead. All right. So I spoke, and he groaned aloud and spoke unanswered. Son of Laertius, seed of Zeus, there's also Odysseus. That's not really long epithet for Odysseus again. The evil will of the spirit and the wind, wild wine bewildered me. I got drunk, and I lay down on the roof of Cersei's palace, and never thought when I went down to go by the way of the long ladder, but blundered straight off the edge of the roof, so that my neck bone was broken out of the sockets, and my soul went to Hades. But now I pray you, by those who have yet to see me, who are not here, by your wife and by your father, who reared you when you were little, and by Telemachus, missed that one, who you left alone in your palace. Sorry. I know that before you leave this place in the house of Hades, you will go back to your well-made ship on the island of Iolia. That's where Cersei lives. There at that time, my lord, I ask you to remember me, and do not go and leave me behind unwept, unburied, when you leave, for fear I might become the god's curse upon you. But burn me there with all my armor that belongs to me, and heap up a grave mound beside the beach of the gray sea for an unhappy man, so that those who come will know of me. So he wants to just be remembered. He wants to be buried and remembered, right? With a grave mound. Like in our culture, we do a gravestone, right? It's all the same thing. Do this for me, and on top of the grave mound plant an oar with which I rode when I was alive among my companions. So he spoke, and I in turn spoke to him in answer. All this, my unhappy friend, I will do for as you ask me. So we two stayed there exchanging our sad words, I on one side holding my sword over the blood, while on the opposite beside me the phantom, my companion, talked long with me. All right, that's the end of our selection for the day. So Odysseus has made his way to the underworld. He's going to talk, hopefully, with the prophet, and and from there get instructions on how to get home safely.